This was a war unlike any other. Ghostly soldiers, like smoke, were pervasive and ethereal. Wherever they went, all life vanished in an instant. Until the appearance of one man offered a chance to turn the tide. A few days earlier, an American soldier was on a reconnaissance mission in the Eastern European theater. He was wearing the most advanced hyperspectral imager. In some ruins, he found many civilian bodies. Their eyes were all rolled back. A bizarre death. Then, he heard a strange sound. Following the sound to a ruined area, a white energy form suddenly appeared on the hyperspectral image. Immediately after, the imager's signal was also disrupted. However, when the soldier took off the imager, he saw nothing unusual. When he put the imager back on, suddenly, the white energy form rushed straight at him. Meanwhile, the protagonist, Mark, was at a junkyard looking for tetrazine. This substance is used for transistor luminescence. Back in the lab, after installing the tetrazine, he tested the performance of a pulse laser. The moment the laser fired, the block of ice before him completely melted. Seeing this, the military wanted to conduct live subject experiments. This went against Mark's original intentions. He designed weapons for deterrence and defense, not for melting human bodies. That evening, his superior came to talk to him. The hyperspectral imager he developed had already been deployed to the Eastern European front. The situation there was very sensitive. A soldier had recorded something he shouldn't have before he died. But the military was unwilling to disclose the video's content. General James hoped he would go there to help solve this problem. Soon, Mark took a plane to Eastern Europe. James came to receive Mark personally. He told Mark that an insurgency was happening here. The US military was here to quell the conflict. After arriving at the base, James showed him the footage recorded by the imager. White, ghost-like figures appeared several times in the video. Mark was stunned. He didn't know what it was either. James then took him to see the video of the soldier being killed by the ghost. But before that, Agent Furlani had him sign a non-disclosure agreement. If he spoke about what he saw, he would face life in prison. After signing, he saw the video. The moment the Special Forces soldier was touched by the phantom, he died instantly. Such a rapid manner of death sent a chill down Mark's spine. Furlani told Mark that people touched by the white figures have their internal organs frozen, yet their skin shows burns and corrosion. Recently, many civilians have died in the same way. Autopsies couldn't provide any explanation. Some local youths would spray paint ghost totems at the incident sites. They believe the horrific war has awakened some kind of spirit. James asked Mark for his thoughts. Mark said he needed equipment and time. Only by capturing a more detailed image could he make a judgment. But Furlani said there was no more time. If he had no ideas, they would have to submit the current findings. Their initial theory is that it's a type of cloaking device. That insurgents are attacking US soldiers wearing dynamic camouflage suits. Mark, however, thought this was absurd. The local insurgents couldn't possibly have such advanced technology, because the US Battle Research Institute is also working on this problem, and they are still far from a prototype. The US is already the most advanced in this field. How could someone have built it before the United States? Besides, even if it were cloaking technology, how would that explain the cause of death? Furlani suggested it might be a shockwave. Mark said they were just guessing wildly. To reach a conclusion and complete the report, they had to capture a clearer picture. After hearing this, James directly assigned the mission to Mark. Mark brought a large hyperspectral camera, bigger and more powerful. It would be mounted on a Humvee. With this, as long as the distance is close enough, all phantoms will be revealed. Mark stated he didn't want anyone else operating this device, so he would accompany the Special Forces team. Soon, the camera replaced the vehicle's .50 caliber machine gun. Seeing the powerful weapon being replaced, the surrounding Special Forces soldiers started mocking Mark. Fortunately, the sergeant major appeared in time to clear the air. Afterward, the Special Forces team set out on their mission. They had to go deep into insurgent territory to rescue a reconnaissance squad trapped there. The smoke of war spread through the city. Everywhere were buildings destroyed by artillery fire. The vehicle soon reached a target building. The Special Forces immediately disembarked and went on alert. They entered the building, providing cover for each other. The soldiers methodically split up to search. The building was filled with the bodies of insurgents, and also the fallen members of the recon team. Unsurprisingly, their cause of death was identical. Suddenly, Mark saw an energy fluctuation on the monitor. Everyone immediately aimed their weapons at a bathtub. It was emitting a faint blue light on the spectral display. It looked very much like a ghost. The men cautiously approached the tub. Then they flipped it over. They were about to shoot but found a soldier hiding inside. They quickly helped the soldier aside. He was terrified. He described the horrific scene to them. All the recon team members died in an instant. A cold blanket seemed to pass right through their bodies. He said his dead teammates were upstairs. At the same time, another team was advancing upstairs. The bodies of the recon team were everywhere. Their deaths all showed signs of cryogenic burns. One of the soldiers suddenly noticed an anomaly. He thought it was just an equipment glitch. But the next second, the energy fluctuation took a human form. Seeing it, the soldier immediately opened fire, but the bullets passed through the energy form and hit the wall. The captain immediately ordered the other soldiers to switch to heavier weapons. They were determined to take down these mysterious killers, but the ghosts were too fast. The reinforcing soldiers didn't even see the ghosts before they were taken down one by one. Wherever the ghosts passed, soldiers fell like grass in a storm. Finally, someone spotted a ghost on an imager. Everyone immediately opened fire, but the bullets all passed through the energy form, hitting the wall behind. Seeing the heavy casualties, Mark urged the sergeant major to order a retreat. But Furlani said they couldn't return empty-handed. It's a good thing you're not on the front lines. In the sergeant major's moment of hesitation, several more men died. Seeing this, he quickly ordered all soldiers to pull back. However, the ghosts were still behind them, reaping their lives. They were too fast. Any soldier who moved too slowly was killed instantly. And they could also climb out of windows. A soldier rappelling down hadn't even landed before he was taken by a rushing ghost. Mark was desperate to capture an image of the ghost, but the controller was too slow. He jumped out of the vehicle and quickly activated the device. At such a close range, he finally captured a high-definition image. Mark stared at the screen in disbelief. The energy form before him had a clear human face. Could they really be ghosts of war? Just then, the sergeant major rushed out to land a fatal blow. He shouldered a rocket launcher and fired at the empty space. But when the smoke cleared, the ghost was unharmed. Instead, enraged, it instantly took the sergeant major. The soldiers running from the building couldn't escape either. The last remaining soldiers scrambled into the armored vehicle to escape. Only then could they catch their breath. Mark asked the recon soldier how he had survived. He learned the bathtub had protected him. Suddenly, the armored vehicle hit an enemy landmine. Both vehicles were blown over. The recon soldier they had just rescued was killed in the blast. The surviving soldiers scrambled out of the wreckage. Without the vehicles for cover, they couldn't make it back to base. They needed to find a building to fortify immediately. Mark quickly unmounted the camera. He followed the soldiers to an abandoned factory. Furlani sat nearby, her head bleeding. She looked completely stunned. They tried to call for rescue, but the comms were dead. Now they knew the white figures weren't cloaking devices, because no human can pass through walls, let alone get hit by 3 bursts of armor-piercing rounds and be unharmed. The ghosts had already killed 19 special ops soldiers. A soldier asked Mark what they were. Mark only said the ghosts were humanoid, and that they were conscious. Everyone was stunned. Weren't those just ghosts? Many of their imagers were destroyed in the crash. The ghosts could attack at any moment. Fortunately, Mark's camera was still working. They placed the device by a high window. Through the camera's display, they saw a large group of ghosts outside trying to break into the factory. But strangely, they were stopped by a circle of black dust. A soldier had just fallen in the dust. There was still powder residue on his hands. Mark realized it was pure iron filings. The ghosts were being blocked by iron filings, and the filings were spread in a complete circle around them. They realized someone else was here. They raised their guns ready to clear the building. As soon as they entered the corridor, they were met with gunfire. When they went inside, they discovered the shooters were a brother and sister. They learned that the two of them were alone. Their father was the one who spread the iron filings outside. Mark asked the sister where her father was. The girl's father knew how to stop the ghosts. That meant he knew more about them than anyone. But when the girl led them to the room, there was only a body killed by a ghost. Her father had died while setting up the defenses. Mark then found a ceramic shard on the body, along with a map of Masarovi. There was a power plant there. The little girl said the power plant was the source of everything. All the ghosts came from there. Just then, the COM specialists managed to contact HQ. James was sending a helicopter and tanks to support them, but they couldn't land due to the power lines everywhere. They would have to evacuate from a square 800 meters away. But outside the door, it was now swarming with ghosts. The group began discussing how to get out. Suddenly, Mark noticed the surrounding barrels were full of iron filings. They could use it to buy themselves time. As elite special forces, the soldiers immediately thought of making dirty bombs. The factory had plenty of glass bottles. Combined with a small amount of explosives, they could make iron filing grenades. They also had grenades and other containers. Soon, they began to craft the grenades. Meanwhile, Mark started modifying the camera. By reversing the polarity of the internal components and adding a light source, it could become a searchlight. It could emit a specific wavelength of ultraviolet light. All ghosts would become visible under its beam. They could even be seen with the naked eye. He then relayed the modification method to the engineers at HQ, telling them to equip the incoming tanks with searchlights. The next morning, they had finished preparations and were about to leave. Suddenly, a soldier saw movement in a distant building. Mark quickly turned on the searchlight to see what was happening. The light shone on the opposite building. Sure enough, the ghosts became visible in the light. Blocked by the iron filings on the ground, they were preparing to cross via the high-voltage cables. Seeing the ghosts about to charge, the group quickly retreated. They had just left the factory when the ghosts spotted them. They were too fast. The soldiers could only fire iron filing grenades at them, but the effect was minimal. Seeing this, one of them fired a grenade directly at the ground. The blast successfully trapped the ghost in place. The method worked, but there were simply too many ghosts. The group stopped fighting and fled quickly. The ghosts were in hot pursuit, and the iron filings could only hold them back temporarily, not eliminate them. Countless ghosts trailing long tails charged at them. Despite the cover from the dirty bombs, soldiers were still being touched by ghosts and killed instantly. The team didn't dare to stop, running towards the extraction point. Seeing more and more ghosts chasing them, the soldiers fired a massive volley of grenades. The scattered iron filings formed a smoke screen, temporarily halting their advance. After a perilous journey, the team finally reached a square. Suddenly, the searchlight overheated and burned out. Now they couldn't see the ghosts' movements again. With no other choice, they hid in a bus to wait for rescue. Fortunately, 3 tanks arrived at the square shortly after. Everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. The army had also installed searchlights on the tanks. As the light shone on the opposite building, countless ghosts appeared inside, watching the people in the square. The reinforcements, seeing the ghosts for the first time, also panicked. Ignoring their rescue objective, they fired at the building. They quickly destroyed the building where the ghosts were. But the reinforcements didn't know physical attacks were useless. After the smoke cleared, the ghosts reappeared at the base of the building. Enraged, the ghosts unleashed their full power and charged the reinforcements. In just a few moments, the reinforcements were almost wiped out. One of the ghosts slammed into a tank, but strangely, it didn't pass right through. It seemed surprised by the contact with the tank. After a few more hits, the tank was disabled. The searchlight was also damaged and flickered out. Everyone was plunged back into blind panic. The invisible ghosts were frantically reaping the soldiers' lives. Just then, Mark and the others noticed the little boy was gone. He had gone to retrieve the ceramic shard his father left him, exposing himself to the ghosts. The group rushed towards the boy, but it was too late. The little boy lost his life, just like that. It was clear the ghosts had no sympathy, only a desire to kill. Everyone stood frozen in despair. Thankfully, the helicopter finally arrived for extraction. Everyone scrambled towards the chopper. Just then, Mark noticed the ghosts were being hindered by the rotor wash. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. He took the iron filing dirty bomb from his back and slammed it onto the ground. Countless iron filings were blown towards the ghosts by the downdraft, successfully buying everyone precious time. The group finally escaped the hellish square. However, before they could even rest, James called to inform them that the base had fallen. They had to head to a new shelter. En route, they saw the ghosts had already spread to the streets. The flashes from them slaughtering people were everywhere. Soon, the helicopter reached the shelter and dropped them off. There were many civilians here. There was no telling how long it could hold out. A colonel told them to find as many supplies as possible and try to re-establish contact with the outside world. Mark found the little girl again to ask about her father's profession. Why did her father know so much about the ghosts? The girl told him her father used to work at the nuclear power plant. He was in charge of manufacturing some kind of ceramic container. The ghosts came from the power plant. Suddenly, the shelter began to shake. The soldiers raised their guns, preparing for a fight. It was James, arriving with his remaining troops. From James's expression, you could tell the base had suffered an unprecedented, devastating attack. He told everyone that of the 240 Special Forces members at the base, only 19 were left. And all the American soldiers in this shelter were the last US forces remaining in the country. An air of despair fell over everyone. Fierce arguments broke out about whether they should leave. But Mark stood aside, lost in thought. Connecting the day's events, he suddenly understood. The Rican soldier had survived by hiding in a ceramic bathtub, and the armor of an M1 Abrams tank contained ceramic plates. That's why the ghosts couldn't pass through the tank. Since there are materials they can't pass through, it means they aren't natural, but man-made. In nature, matter has three states: solid, gas, and liquid. The same substance can transition between these three states. But besides these, there is a man-made state, the condensate state, predicted by Einstein and Bose. It has several properties like being slowed by iron filings and being able to pass through walls but not ceramic. It has an extremely low physical temperature, so one touch is fatal. These perfectly match the ghost's characteristics. To form a condensate requires absorbing immense energy, and Masarovi has a nuclear power plant. The ghosts are a condensate weapon they created. This was either a deliberate attack or an accidental leak. Although it doesn't explain why the ghosts maintain a human form, they are definitely a man-made condensate, and all states of matter can be disrupted. It's just a matter of the type and amount of energy. So if they can build a plasma discharge rifle, they can destroy the ghosts. They need to search the shelter and James's equipment for parts to build the plasma rifles. Everyone quickly got to work. They disassembled weapons, salvaging usable parts. Then they found power cells and fitted them to the weapons. After some tuning by Mark, they successfully built the plasma rifles. It can fire a focused energy pulse to disrupt the condensate. The soldiers also found a robotic dog. They mounted a searchlight on it to scout the path. Then they started formulating a battle plan. The Special Forces team will create a diversion at the front gate. Mark will then infiltrate the power plant to find the source. Soon, it was the next day. Fully armed, they all arrived at the power plant. They deployed the robotic dog and turned on its searchlight. They discovered many condensates scattered around the gate. The colonel immediately set up the plasma rifle. Just then, the ghosts noticed their arrival and began to take form. As the rifle finished charging, the colonel pulled the trigger. Seeing the ghost was destroyed, the other soldiers quickly landed, launching an all-out assault on the power plant. At the same time, Mark and Furlani flew by helicopter into the heart of the plant. They had to find the source while the soldiers held the ghosts off. However, when they entered the power plant, they discovered there were ghosts guarding this area too. A soldier saw them and quickly fired his plasma rifle, but he didn't expect the ghosts here to be even faster. No matter how he aimed, he couldn't hit them. Two soldiers decided to stay behind to buy time, letting Mark and Furlani push further inside. Soon, the two of them successfully found the lab, but a major accident had occurred here. Only the bodies of a few researchers lay on the floor. Mark's deduction was correct. The ghosts were man-made weapons. And right now, they were still being produced. With the searchlight, Mark saw the condensate in the containers. The researchers here scanned human molecular structures and then printed that data using the condensate. This was a weapons production line. The two then arrived at the power supply warehouse and were utterly shocked by the scene. It appeared this was the source of the ghosts. Countless condensate ghosts were held in ceramic containers, and they were conscious, looking terrified. Half of the containers had leaked due to an accident, which is what opened Pandora's box. The researchers were all killed before they could stop it. In the center was a massive control console. Mark used a researcher's ID card to log in. This was a computer for shutting down the ghost's energy supply. Severing all supply lines would eliminate the ghosts. Mark quickly climbed onto the conduits to disconnect them. At the same time, the soldiers outside had destroyed most of the ghosts with the plasma rifles. Just as they were about to rest, the dispersed condensate around them suddenly gathered together, forming a giant energy mass. The plasma rifles were no longer effective against it. In just a moment, several more soldiers fell. Seeing this, the colonel gathered the nearby plasma rifles, linking them together to create a plasma cannon. He attached all the power cells and began charging it. The situation in the lab was also grim. The explosions outside began to crack the containers. The ghosts realized Mark was trying to cut their power and burst from their cells to stop him. Luckily, Forlani managed to disperse them. At that moment, the plasma cannon finished charging. A massive explosion scattered the energy mass, but it also shattered the containers in the lab. Countless ghosts charged towards Mark. Just as everyone's life hung in the balance, Mark finally disconnected the power at the last second. All the ghosts froze in place, then gradually dissipated. The soldiers outside were also saved. Even more surprisingly, the two soldiers who had provided cover for Mark also survived. With all the condensate gone, the war was finally over. Mark and Forlani were preparing to leave when they stumbled into a basement. Here, they learned why the ghosts were conscious. There were numerous disembodied human nervous systems. They were extracted and suspended in a nutrient solution, then connected via data cables to the condensate to become ghosts. These people were trapped in agony between life and death. That's why they killed on sight, to vent their pain. Mark couldn't bear to let them suffer any longer. He cut off their life support directly. These people were finally at peace. But Forlani stopped Mark from continuing, because this was all evidence, a result that had cost so many lives. But Mark worried that if the military got this technology, they would replicate it to use against their own enemies. He didn't want science to be used in this way, so he destroyed all the experimental data. Afterward, the survivors returned to the shelter. In the end, a new research unit arrived. They were to dismantle and rebuild the entire power plant. And the Special Forces survivors, without any rest, packed their gear and embarked on a new mission. They truly never stop. I suppose they never will. Mark could only take a plane back home. And that's where the film ends. Spectral is a sci-fi film based on real-world concepts. The Bose-Einstein condensate was predicted in the 1920s and proven by scientists 75 years later. In this state, all atoms are gathered together, exhibiting a quantum state of the lowest possible energy. They become a single entity with uniform properties. Its temperature is close to absolute zero, so contact with the human body causes cryogenic burns. The film is set against the backdrop of war, where scientists create a system to control the condensate. But a leak ultimately leads to a loss of control. Countless civilians die at their hands. When technology that humanity cannot master is made into a weapon, it could ultimately destroy all of humankind. When the atomic bomb was created, Oppenheimer worried its chain reaction would ignite the atmosphere. Einstein also once said, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." Humanity should cherish its hard-won peace. The film's special effects are excellent, presenting the ghosts and the condensate quite realistically. The plot has some elements of individual heroism, But in fact, when a crisis occurs, a hero will always rise to the occasion to save others. Overall, the film is quite outstanding in its visuals and themes. It's worth watching. Alright, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed my video, please subscribe to my channel. Your support is my greatest encouragement.